Beloved Saints, today's 5-minute message of redemptive history is about Joiada in the genealogy of the high priest from the 6th book of the redemptive history series, the eternal high priest of the covenantal oath. When we look at Nehemiah 12, verse 10 and verse 22, Joiada was Eliashib's son, and he was the 27th generation high priest in the genealogy. He was also the 4th high priest of the period of the post-exile. The name Joiada in Hebrew is a combination of the words Jehovah and Yada, which means to know. Thus the name means the Lord knows. In Nehemiah 13, verses 28 to 29, it states that Joiada allowed one of his sons to become Sanballat's son-in-law. Nehemiah 13, verse 28 states, "One of the sons of Joiada, son of Eliashib the high priest, was son-in-law to Sanballat the Horonite, and I drove him away from me." Thus, Joiada became an in-law with Sanballat. Sanballat was someone who interfered with the rebuilding of the Jerusalem's walls, so he was an enemy to the Israelites. But Joiada became an in-law with such a person. Afterwards, Nehemiah drove out the son of Joiada who had married Sanballat's daughter. In Nehemiah 13:28, the word drove away are in the Hiphil causative stem with the waw consecutive form of the word bara, indicating that Nehemiah immediately drove him away. The person driven out was Joiada's son. Sin had to be driven out immediately in order to preserve the holiness of the community. When we look at Nehemiah 13, verses 26 to 27, it uses an example of King Solomon, who was greatly loved by God, but committed a great sin before God by marrying Gentile women. Nehemiah 13, verses 26 to 27 states, "Was it not because of marriages like these that Solomon, king of Israel, sinned? Among the many nations there was no king like him. He was loved by his God, and God made him king over all Israel. But even he was led into sin by foreign women. Must we hear now that you too are doing all this terrible wickedness and are being unfaithful to our God by marrying foreign women?" Everyone, Joiada's son became a son-in-law of Sanballat, a Gentile and an enemy of Israel. As a result, he was driven out of the Israelite community. At that time, Joiada must have regretted with such a heartache. He knew his son was marrying a daughter of Sanballat, but he turned a blind eye and allowed it to happen. He must have considered it insignificant at the time and thought nothing of the intermarriage. However, it was a great sin before God, and it would destroy the holiness in the Israelite community. Thus, Nehemiah urgently took action to preserve the holiness and the purity of the community. Beloved saints, Joiada did not realize that intermarriage with an enemy was an act of defiling the priesthood and breaking the covenant. It was a sin for the community. However, like the meaning of the name Joiada, which is Lord knows, God knew that intermarriage with Gentiles was a sin against God that would destroy the purity and holiness of the community. I pray that we will learn from today's word to keep God's word of the covenant and preserve the purity and holiness of the church community. Let us be able to fulfill the duties as spiritual priests and be remembered by God. I bless in the name of the Lord.